You know, I hope the league funds some of these people. Like, seriously. First of all, because they should, but second of all, think about how expensive it would be to keep a kid like Wally fed. I mean, really think about that for a second. I mean, kids eat a lot anyways, but someone with his metabolism? So, artificial snow machine. No one notices. And apparently it was done by the five snow villains, according to an interview, or a response, excuse me, by one of the creators. And no one noticed any of the. I mean, they've really got to upgrade the scanners on that thing. Although you'll notice they mention that the thing does not have a gun on it. And I found that interesting because in most of the other versions of continuity, the tower actually does have a giant cannon, an ion cannon, basically on the bottom of it. So interesting. I'm actually pretty big fan of birthday parties, by the way. It's another year in which you can tell the world, nah, screw you, I actually made it another year. So it's a good cause for celebration, I think. And it's a nice little party. And this is where I want to talk about Wally, because Wally's an interesting character. He's fairly perceptive. This episode goes into his mind several times, and we hear his thoughts. So he's perceptive, he knows how to think on his feet, and he's pretty intelligent. So, how has he never noticed that Megan and Superboy are together? Well, I actually have a theory on that. I think he did. Or did on some level or another. Or, this is actually my favorite theory and the one I'm leading up to. I think he didn't really care. I mean, yeah, she's hot, but that's it. Like, that's complete surface level attraction, right? So he didn't care enough to pay any real attention to figure out anything real. So when he notices, his reaction is just, oh man. Notice that Artemis had a far more severe reaction to the same revelation not too long ago. And yet here his reaction is, ah, and that's it. He doesn't dwell on it, it doesn't affect him. He's just, oh well. Because of course it isn't. Because it doesn't have any real, shall we say, gravity to him. I'll come back to that point later. So he has to cross the continental U.S. in about 4 hours. He spends about 15 minutes fighting Savage and gets there with 20 minutes in time. So 3 hours, 25 minutes to cross the continental U.S. That's pretty fast. In fact, I bothered to figure out how fast that is, thanks to Google giving me an actual map of a route, assuming he would also take a route. That's about 837.65 miles an hour, or, for those of you on the other side of the pond, 1,348.067 kph. That is very fast. And it's funny because the show seems to show him as being much, much, much slower than, even in this episode. Now, granted, we know that he has to have, like, a full tilt. He can't just move fast innately. He has to actually wind up and then get going. That's why he needed to clear a line, right? An empty pathway to work through. So that actually does make a degree of sense that that's his, his sprinting speed, basically, but not his speed overall. Still, he mentions the speed of sound, which, for record, is 767 miles an hour. There's a really cool bit, though, and I'll forgive the episode flubbing the numbers here, because there's this bit where the guys are like, do you see him? Nope. Zoom. Did you see him? Nope. There's a lot of funny dialogue in this show. I like it. So I actually feel like I knew this already, because Savage has already shown up on the screen. But this is Savage's first real scene, and he's voiced by Miguel Ferrer. That's actually pretty awesome. I just wanted to comment on it. Moving on. So he gets there and, she passed away 12 minutes ago. Ouch. I put in my notes, that's probably a lie, though. Not only because I couldn't believe that a show like this would actually have the balls to, do that, but also because it's just a little bit too convenient, especially with Savage saying, that should be long enough. So we see Wally's competence on display multiple times in the finale there. We get a lot of insight into his mind. Like I said, perceptive, smart, he is basically a science geek, and he's good at thinking on his feet, no pun intended. His greatest asset, in my opinion, is not actually his speed, it's his mind, and that is actually what he uses to defeat his enemy, go figure. Which brings me to my final point. So Wally really wanted to work alongside the League, and multiple times he basically screws up because he wants to be part of the big time. The mere fact that he was fighting Savage so long indicates that. However, it was not because of gross negligence, it was because of lack of attention. He basically was being a kid. I'm praising this, by the way, in case you're missing that, because it is entirely too common of a thing where writers don't know how to write children or teenagers. They tend to write them as either young adults or extremes of one particular archetype or another. Here, Wally obviously does care. You know, at no point does he think, I don't want to help this young girl with this transplant. And there's even this great bit where he says, who is this girl? And Batman says, does that matter? Well, no. But he didn't think the question ahead of time. He's not callous. He's not evil. It's just he's not thinking about things. There's no weight to them, right? So you can see his disappointment, and it's all boiled down to that basic concept that we usually refer to as immaturity, which, in my opinion, is best described as a lack of understanding of the gravity of reality. This is then wonderfully bookended by the end of the episode, where he helps an individual at a personal level, and she expresses direct gratitude to him for that. That's a nice touch, because now he has some additional experience. This is not the first time this happened, it's worth noting, but he has additional experience on weight, on significance, on gravity. These words I keep using deliberately throughout the course of this mini-nation, because that's what it takes, in my opinion, to truly become mature, is an understanding of things. So this is actually a pretty cool episode, and it is nice to see him move forward as a character. I hope we'll see more of this in the future.